What if the man you've called Dad for your whole life has just been lying to you? What if every loving memory, every bedtime story, every shared secret wasn't love at all, but just a tool to keep him hidden in a past life he stole? Christy Wakeman loved the scar above her father's eye. It was a small, white line, faded with time, just above his left brow. He'd always told her it was a baking accident, a silly mistake with a hot pan when he was a young man. To her, it was just a familiar, comforting part of his kind, gentle face. A part of Oleg, her dad. She had no way of knowing that scar had a name, and that name was Timur. She had no way of knowing her father's real name was Dmitri, that the baking accident was a story, a carefully crafted lie he had told her for 20 years, a lie that had unknowingly turned his own daughter into the perfect walking time bomb. The bell jingled. For men, dark suits, cold eyes. They didn't just enter the diner. They consumed it, sucking all the air and light out of the room. They sat in the back booth, a bubble of expensive, watchful silence. Christy just saw four difficult customers. She didn't see the monster from her father's past. She didn't see the man whose face was an older, harder, and more terrifying version of her own. She walked over, coffee pot in hand, just wanting them to leave. But as she looked at the boss, at his stern face and tattooed hand, she felt that jolt, that strange, impossible recognition. He looked just like her dad. She almost said nothing. If she had just put the coffee down, if she had just walked away, her world would have stayed safe. The lie would have held. But she didn't. The lie her father had built for 20 years had worked too well. She felt safe. She smiled, trying to be friendly. "Excuse me, sir. This is going to sound strange, but my dad, he looks just like you." And just like that, the lie she loved destroyed the man she loved. 20 years of running was over. Let me take you back to where it all began. But first of all, welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you're listening, hooked, and already enjoying the story, please hit subscribe. Tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love seeing our community around the world. Tomorrow I'm dropping another sweet story, so don't miss it. And the first 4 people to comment with their real names will be featured in our next story. Now, let's continue. It was 2:13 a.m. at the Red Star Diner. The diner was a small box of red vinyl and chrome, sitting on the side of a lonely, dark highway. It was an island of light in a sea of nothing. The air inside smelled the way it always did, like stale coffee, bleach from the counters, and the sweet, comforting scent of apple pie warming in its glass case. Christy Wakeman was tired. Her feet ached inside her sensible black shoes. The diner was dead. It was always dead on a Tuesday. She was wiping down the main counter for the 3rd time, not because it was dirty, but because it was the only thing to do. The slow, rhythmic squeak of her rag on the formica was the only sound, other than the low hum of the refrigerator. "Another wild night, huh, Sal?" she called back to the kitchen. Sal, the cook, poked his head through the service window. He was a large man in a white apron, with a kind, tired face. "Dead as a doornail, kid. You'd think someone would want a pancake at 2 a.m. "You'd think?" Christy sighed, leaning on the counter. She glanced at the nursing textbook she had tucked underneath, next to the ketchup bottles. She was halfway through a chapter on anatomy. Felt like a million miles away. "You finished that college application?" Sal asked. "Almost," Christy said. "Just the essay. Describe a challenge you have overcome. I'm trying to figure out if surviving your endless meatloaf special counts." Sal chuckled. "You'll get there, kid. You're the hardest worker I know. You're going to make a great nurse." Christy smiled. She was a hard worker. This job, this endless, boring job, was her ticket out. Every dollar she made, Every crumpled bill and handful of coins left on the tables went into a glass jar under her bed labeled college fund. It was barely a quarter full, but it was a start. She wanted to help people. She wanted a life bigger than this small town, a life bigger than this counter. Her life was simple. It was good. She had this job. She had her dream. And she had her dad. Her dad, Oleg. He was her whole world. Her mother had passed away when she was little, and it had always just been the two of them. He ran Wakeman's Breads, the small bakery in their town. He was a quiet man, a gentle man. He always smelled of flour, yeast, and a little bit of cinnamon. He was her best friend, her rock. She smiled, thinking of him. He was probably asleep now, but in another hour he'd be up. He'd be in the warm, bright bakery, whistling a soft, tuneless song as he started the first batch of dough. He was her hero. She loved everything about him. The way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. The way he was so quiet, but always listened. She even loved the small, white scar above his left eye. It was a familiar, comforting part of his face. He'd told her 100 times he got it as a boy, a baking accident with a hot pan. It was just that. Her world was predictable. It was safe. And tonight it was very, very boring. She looked over at the only other customers in the diner. Frank and Al, two old men who came in every night like clockwork. They were in their usual booth arguing about a baseball game from 1985. "I'm telling you, Al," Frank said, waving his spoon. "The ump was blind. He missed the tag." "You're blind," Al shot back. "He was safe by a mile." Christy sighed, picked up the coffee pot, and started to walk over. "More coffee, fellas?" "Yeah. Fill her up," Frank grumbled. She was just about to pour when the bell on the diner's front door jingled. The sound was soft, but in the quiet diner it sounded like a gunshot. Christy looked up, a fake smile already on her face. "Welcome to the Red Star. I'll be right with—" The words died in her throat. Frank and Al stopped arguing. Mid-sentence. Frank's hand, holding his spoon, froze in the air. In the kitchen, Sal, who had poked his head out, quickly and silently ducked back behind the window. For men stepped inside. They were not truckers. They were not college kids on a road trip. They were like shadows detaching from the dark parking lot. They moved with a heavy, silent grace. The sound of their expensive leather shoes on the cheap linoleum tile was sharp and loud in the silence. They all wore dark, expensive suits. Suits that cost more than Christy made in a year. Suits that did not belong in a 2 a.m. diner that smelled of bleach. They brought the cold night air in with them, a smell of winter and something else. Something sharp, like expensive cologne. They did not look at Christy. They did not look at Frank and Al. They scanned the room, their eyes missing nothing. They moved as one. They slid into the biggest red booth, the one in the back corner, with its back to the wall. The man who sat facing the door was clearly the boss. It was Timur Pokrovsky. His face was stern. His hair was graying at the temples, and his eyes were a cold, pale gray. He looked like he hadn't smiled in 1,000 years. He placed his left hand on the table. Tattoos crept up from his collar and snaked down onto the back of his hand. Next to him sat Pavel. He was the one from the image with the thick scowl. His eyes were dark, angry, and impatient. Opposite them sat Mikhail and Victor. They were huge men, both with thick beards. They were the walls. They sat and stared out at the diner, their faces blank and watchful. They did not talk. They did not open the menus. They just sat, and they sucked all the air out of the room. The hum of the refrigerator seemed louder now. Frank and Al, for the first time ever, were completely quiet. They both stared down into their coffee cups as if they held the secrets of the universe. Christie's heart was hammering against her ribs. This was not a normal customer. This was not a late-night argument about baseball. This was trouble. Her hands were shaking. Just do your job, Christie. Get the order. Get them the coffee. Get them out. She picked up her small green notepad and a pen. She swallowed, trying to get moisture back into her dry mouth. She forced her aching feet to move. She walked slowly over to the booth. Felt like walking through deep water. "Good evening, gentlemen," she said. Her voice was a small, squeaky thing she didn't recognize. Can I get you started with some coffee?" The four men looked up at her at the same time. Felt like being hit by a physical force. Felt like four wolves looking at a lamb. Timur, the boss, held her gaze. He nodded once. "Coffee," he said. His voice was low and heavy with a thick Russian accent. It was a voice that was used to giving commands and being obeyed instantly. "Just coffee. Four. Right? Yes. Right away, sir," Christie stammered. She turned and practically fled to the coffee pot. Her hands were shaking so badly that she sloshed hot coffee over the rim of the first mug, burning her fingers. She hissed but didn't make a sound. "Don't drop it. Don't spill it. Just bring them the coffee." She put the four heavy, steaming mugs on her tray and walked back. The silence in the diner was absolute. She could hear the click of her own shoes on the floor. She set the cups down one by one. "Here you are, sir," she said to Victor, who just stared through her. "For you," she said to Mikhail, who watched her hand like it was a snake. "And for you," she said to Pavel. His dark eyes followed her hand, and his lip curled in a tiny, impatient scowl. He looked at her like she was a bug. Then she got to the boss, Timur. She placed the last cup in front of him. "And for you, sir." Her hand was trembling. She was about to pull it away, to run back to the safety of her counter. But she paused. She was terrified, and in her fear, she was trying to find a human connection. A way to make them see her as a person. She looked at his face, his stern brow, his sharp, cold eyes, the shape of his nose, the set of his jaw. It was strange. He looked familiar, and in that moment, a stupid, innocent, and absolutely fatal thought popped into her head. It was so weird, so specific, that it bypassed her brain and came straight out of her mouth. "Excuse me, sir," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Timur, who had been looking at his cup, slowly raised his eyes to meet hers. This is going to sound strange," she stammered. "But my dad, he looks just like you." The world ended. It didn't just get quiet. It stopped. In the corner, Frank, the old man, was so startled he dropped his spoon. It hit his saucer with a deafening clack, and then nothing. Sal, in the kitchen, must have been watching, because the whir of the exhaust fan suddenly shut off. Click. The silence that fell was not empty. It was full. It was full of shock and anger and a terrible, sudden focus. Christie watched in slow motion as the four men reacted. Pavel, the angry one, didn't just tense. His hand snapped inside his dark suit jacket. His chair scraped half an inch on the floor as his muscles coiled, ready to stand. His lip pulled back from his teeth in a silent snarl. Mikhail and Victor, the walls, went from watchful to active. Their faces went completely blank, which was 1,000 times scarier than Pavel's anger. They were switched on. They were weapons waiting for the signal. But it was Timur who was the most terrifying. He was the epicenter. He was in the middle of lifting his cup to his lips. He stopped. His hand, holding the heavy white mug, did not move. It hung in the air, an inch from his mouth, defying gravity. He did not look at her. He looked into her. His pale gray eyes were not angry. They were not surprised. They were calculating. He was processing an impossible piece of information. Christie's blood ran cold. The color drained from her face. She could not breathe. What did I say? Why did I say that? Oh God, oh God, oh God, run. But her feet were nailed to the floor. I'm sorry, she stammered, her voice shaking violently. My name is Christie. It's on my tag. I didn't mean anything by it. It was just a stupid. Pavel hissed something in Russian. It was low, guttural, and violent. Idatka, Zasin Yazik. Timur raised one finger. Just one. A single index finger held up half an inch. He didn't look at Pavel. He didn't look away from Christie. Pavel stopped. Instantly. Mid-snarl. He subsided, his face still twisted in rage, but he was silent. He was a dog that had just been kicked by its master. Timur slowly, so slowly, lowered the coffee cup back to the table. It made a tiny, sharp click as it touched the saucer. In the dead silence of the diner, it sounded like a gunshot. He leaned forward, just an inch. The tattoos on his hand seemed to crawl as his fist clenched on the table. His voice, it was not a yell. It was a whisper, and that whisper was the most terrifying sound Christie had ever heard in her life. No one, he said, his accent a cold, sharp blade, looks like me. He held her there, pinned by his gaze, by the sheer force of his will. What? He commanded, his voice soft as poison. Is your father's name? Christie's mind was a blank, white scream. My father's name? Why is he asking? What do I say? She was pinned. His cold, gray eyes were like two nails holding her in place. She couldn't lie. She didn't even know how to lie to a man like this. He wasn't just asking a question. He was pulling the answer out of her. I, she stammered. Her voice was a tiny, trembling thing. My name is Christie. It's on my tag. Christie Wakeman. Your father's name, Timur repeated. His voice didn't get louder. It got softer, sharper, more dangerous. He didn't blink. Oleg, she whispered. The name felt wrong, saying it to this man. Felt like a betrayal. Oleg Wakeman. He runs a bakery in a small town, upstate. It's just a coincidence. Timur's brow furrowed, just slightly. Oleg, he said the name slowly. It tasted strange and unfamiliar in his mouth. He looked over at Pavel. Pavel just gave a tiny, almost invisible shrug. The name Oleg Wakeman meant nothing to them. Timur almost relaxed. He leaned back half an inch. The tension in his shoulders eased. Maybe the girl was just a fool. A stupid girl, half asleep on her shift, making a stupid, nervous comment. He was about to wave her away, to dismiss her like the bug she was. But Christie was trapped in the awful, heavy silence. She saw him relax, but she mistook it for doubt? Disbelief? She was terrified. The silence was stretching, and she felt she had to fill it. She had to explain. She had to make this normal again. She had to fix what she had broken. He really does look like you, she insisted, her voice trembling and desperate. I know it sounds crazy. He's older, of course. His hair is more gray now, but he has the same eyes. That same serious look. She was rambling, her mind racing, just trying to fill the quiet. He doesn't have tattoos, of course. He's just a baker. He's quiet. But the face it's just like yours. And he has a small scar, she said, her voice getting smaller and smaller. A little white line, right here. Without thinking, lost in her panicked explanation, Christy nervously lifted her own shaky finger. She pointed to the spot on her own face, just above her left eye. The moment her finger touched her brow, the entire game changed. Across the table, Mikhail, one of the walls, let out a small, sharp breath. It sounded like a gasp. Pavel, who had been relaxed and scowling, sat bolt upright. His eyes went wide. He stared at Timur, and Timur froze. His face, which had been cold and curious, went pale. It was not a sudden, dramatic change, but a slow draining of all color. His eyes locked onto the spot she was pointing. He saw it. He knew it. He wasn't in the Red Star Diner anymore. He was 20 years in the past. He was in his father's old, dark office. There was shouting. His younger brother, Dmitri, barely 19, was standing in front of him, defiant and angry. "I'm leaving, Timur. I'm taking my share and I am gone. This life, it's yours, not mine." Timur remembered the rage, the betrayal, the disrespect. He remembered grabbing Dmitri by the shirt. He remembered the heavy, gold ring on his own finger. He remembered the flash of his own hand. And he remembered the thin line of blood that had appeared, right there, above his brother's left eye. The scar he had given him, the mark he had left, the last time he ever saw him. The fight right before Dmitri betrayed the family, stole a fortune, and disappeared. Everyone said Dmitri was dead. He'd been killed in a car fire on a lonely road. Timur had believed it. For 20 years, he had mourned the brother he also hated. For 20 years, he had been the Pakhan, alone. He came back to the present with a jolt. He was in a cheap diner, and a girl named Christy Wakeman, daughter of a baker named Oleg, was pointing to the very spot where he had marked his brother for life. He stared at her. "Christy, niece of Oleg?" Christy was frozen in terror. She had no idea what she had just done. Her hand was still near her face. She saw the color drain from the man's face. She saw the pure shock in his eyes. She had said something terribly, terribly wrong. She had just confirmed a ghost was alive. Timur stared at her for 10 solid seconds. The diner was so quiet, Christy could hear the blood pounding in her own ears. Then the terrible, thick tension snapped. Timur leaned back in the booth, and he smiled. It was the most terrifying smile Christy had ever seen in her life. It was not a smile of humor. It was not a smile of warmth. It was the cold, sharp, merciless smile of a predator that has just found its prey after 20 long, hungry years. It was a smile that promised no mercy. It was a smile of pure, terrible satisfaction. He looked at his men. Pavel, Mikhail, Victor. They were all staring at him, confused by his reaction. He gave a tiny, almost invisible nod. A nod that said, "It's him. I found him." The men understood. A silent electric current passed between them. The hunt was on. Timur turned his terrifying smile back to Christy. His voice was suddenly light. It was smooth. It was almost friendly. "Christy Wakeman," he said, as if tasting her name. "You have been very, very helpful." He pushed his now cold cup of coffee toward the center of the table. "Bring us 4 more coffees," he said, his voice casual. "And bring us a piece of your best apple pie. My friend Pavel, he loves sweets." Christy was shaking so hard she could barely stand. This return to normal was the most frightening, insane part of all. He was smiling. He was ordering pie. She had just said something that had made his face go white with shock, and now he was ordering dessert. She felt like she was going to be sick. Yes, sir," she whispered. "Right away." She turned. Her legs felt like they were made of water. She stumbled. grabbing the edge of another booth to steady herself. She fled to the counter, her back burning. She could feel all 4 pairs of eyes watching her walk away. She did not see the look that passed between Timur and Pavel. It was a look of dark, terrible business. She did not hear Pavel lean in and whisper in fast, low Russian, "Boss? It is him? After all this time?" And she did not hear Timur's answer. A single cold word. "Duh. Yes." Christy grabbed the coffee pot, her hands trembling so violently that the pot rattled against the glass burner. She had to get the pie. She had to bring them the pie. And then she didn't know. Hide? Run? She just knew that she had, somehow, just invited a monster into her life. And she had, somehow, just endangered the one person she loved most in the world. Her father, the baker, the man who looked just like a mafia boss. Christy's hands would not stop shaking. She stood behind the counter, but it didn't feel safe anymore. It felt like a thin, wooden wall that wouldn't stop a bullet. She grabbed the metal pie server, but it clattered loudly against the glass dome of the pie case. The sound was like a gunshot in the dead quiet. Sal, the cook, poked his head out of the kitchen window. His face was white as a sheet. "Christy," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Kid, what did you say to them? What's going on?" He wants pie," Christy whispered back. She could barely get the words out. Okay, Sal said, trying to be brave, but his eyes were wide with terror. Just give em the pie. And the coffee. Don't say another word. Not one more word. Just smile and nod and get away from that table. You hear me? Yes, she breathed. She took a deep breath. Just a waitress. You're just a waitress. She slid the sharp edge of the server under a slice of apple pie. The crust flaked. The warm, sweet smell of cinnamon and baked apples filled the air. It was a smell she usually loved. It reminded her of her dad's bakery. Tonight, it made her want to throw up. She managed to get 4 slices onto 4 small plates. She put them on her tray. She grabbed the coffee pot, the hot glass burning her hand, but she barely felt it. Her whole body was numb. She looked at the only other customers, Frank and Al, the old men. They weren't arguing anymore. They were gone. Their table was empty, except for 2 crumpled $5 bills and a half-full cup of coffee. They had seen the look on Timur's face and had fled. The diner was empty. It was just her. And them. She forced her legs to move. It felt like she was wading through deep, cold water. Every step was a nightmare. The 4 men in the booth watched her come. They were perfectly still. They looked like statues. For dark, expensive statues of death. She got to the table. Her hands were trembling so badly that the cups on the tray rattled against the plates. Here you go, she stammered. She set the plates down one by one. Her movements were jerky, robotic. She set Pavel's pie down. He just glared at her, his face a mask of pure hatred. He looked at her like she was something he had stepped in. She set down Mikhail's and Victor's. They didn't even look at her. They just stared at the diner door, watchful. She set the last plate in front of Timur, and then she went to refill his coffee. Her shaking hand made the hot coffee splash. A few dark drops landed on the back of his tattooed hand. Oh God, I'm sorry, Christy yelped. She dropped the pot on the table and grabbed for a napkin to wipe his hand. Do not touch me, Pavel roared. He didn't yell, he exploded. He half stood, his hand coming out of his jacket. He wasn't holding a gun. He was just showing her that he could. Christy screamed. She fell backward, tripping over her own feet. She landed hard on the dirty tile floor, the world spinning. Pavel! Timur's voice was quiet, deadly. He didn't move. He just looked at the drops of coffee on his hand. He hadn't even flinched. Pavel froze, his face dark with rage. But he slowly sat back down. He put his hand back inside his coat. Timur looked down at Christy, who was scrambling to get up, tears of pure terror streaming down her face. "Get up, girl," he said. His voice was not kind. It was just bored. "You made a mess." Christy climbed to her feet, her whole body aching. She grabbed her tray and held it in front of her like a shield. Will that be all, sir?" she whispered, desperate to get away. "No," Timur said. He picked up his fork. "Stay." Christy froze. She stood by the table, shaking from head to toe. Timur took a small, neat bite of the apple pie. He chewed it slowly, thoughtfully. He swallowed. "This is good pie," he said, as if they were just two people talking. "Your father, does he bake pie this good?" Christy was too scared to answer. She just nodded, her eyes wide. "I am sure he does," Timur said. He put his fork down. The friendly, normal moment was over. He looked up at her, and his gray eyes were like chips of ice. The terrible smile was gone. He was all business. "This scar," he said, and he lightly tapped his own brow, in the exact same spot she had pointed to. "The one on your father. Oleg." He said the name Oleg like it was a dirty word. Christy stopped breathing. What about it?" "A scar like that," Timur said. "It tells a story, a history. Did he tell you how he got it? A fall, perhaps? A childhood accident?" "A baking accident," Christy said. The lie felt small and stupid on her tongue. It was the story he had always told her. "A hot pan," she added, trying to make it sound real. "When he was young." Timur actually laughed. It was not a happy sound. It was a short, harsh, cold bark that had no humor in it at all. "A baking accident," he repeated. He shook his head, as if he was disappointed in her. "No, my brother, he was never a good liar. But I see he has gotten better." Christy's heart stopped. It didn't just beat fast. It stopped. "My brother. What did you say?" she whispered. Timur looked up from the pie, and his gray eyes pierced right through her. He leaned forward, his voice dropping so low she had to strain to hear it. "This scar," he said, "is not from a pan. It is from this." He held up his right hand, the hand that had been resting on the table. He held it up so she could see the heavy, dark gold ring on his finger. It had a sharp, square face. "It is a reminder," Timur said, his voice a cold whisper. "A Semeni reminder. Family mark. One I gave him myself." He looked right into her soul. "Your father. His name is not Oleg, is it?" Christy felt the floor drop out from under her. The diner, the sounds of the refrigerator humming, the smell of the coffee, it all rushed in, deafening her. She felt sick. I don't know what you mean," she stammered. "His name is Oleg Wakeman. It's on his driver's license. It's his name," Timur said, cutting her off like a blade, "is Dmitri Pokrovsky, and he is my brother." "No," Christy said. The word was a dry puff of air. "No, that's not true. You're lying. You're crazy." She took a step back, her hand flying to her mouth. "My father is a baker." "He is a baker now," Timur agreed. He was so calm. That was the most terrifying part. He was not angry. He was just stating facts. "He is a good baker, I hope. But before, he was a thief." "No," Christy cried. "He broke our code," Timur said, his voice flat and cold, ignoring her. "He broke our father's heart. He broke my heart. He stole from his family. He stole what was not his, what belonged to the Bratva, the organization, and then he ran. He faked his own death in a car fire. He changed his name, and he pretended to be a simple, stupid baker named Oleg." Christy was shaking her head, tears streaming down her face, hot and silent. "No, no, my dad is a good man. He's gentle. He's kind. He couldn't." "Is he?" Timur asked. His voice was soft again. "Or is he just a good actor? A man who has been lying to his own daughter every single day of her life." He leaned in one last time. "You go home, Christy Wakeman. You go home to your father. You ask Oleg about the scar. And then you ask him about his older brother, Timur. You watch his face when you say my name, and you will see the real man. You will see the liar, the traitor, the ghost." Christy stumbled backward, hitting the hard edge of the counter. She was sick. The warm, safe smell of the bakery, her father's kind smile, the stories he told her, her entire childhood, her entire life. It was all a lie. Her gentle, quiet father was a stranger, a man named Dmitri, a man who had run from this cold-eyed monster who was her uncle. Her normal, safe, boring world was gone. It had evaporated in the smoke of this man's words. In its place was a dark, terrifying story of mafia, traitors, and brothers. Christy's whole world just broke in two. The man she trusted most in the entire world is a stranger. Her father is a lie. I am asking you, what will you do? Would you run? Would you confront them? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Christy just stood there. She was numb. She was broken. She watched as the four men finished their pie. They ate in total silence. It was an awful, casual, normal act. They ate pie while her world was burning to the ground. Finally, Timur wiped his mouth with his napkin. He set it down. He stood up. The other three men stood with him. For dark shadows, for suits, for killers. Timur walked to the counter. Christy was standing there, her back pressed against the coffee machines. She was trapped. She flinched as he got close. He reached into his suit pocket. He pulled out a thick roll of money. It was not a wallet. It was a roll of $100 bills, held together by a simple, elegant black money clip. He did not count it. He just dropped it on the counter. It was a huge stack. More money than Christy had in her entire college savings jar. It must have been thousands of dollars. What is this?" she whispered. "This is for you," Timur said. His voice was soft again, but it had an edge. "For my new niece." The word niece hit her like a slap. "For the good service," he continued, "and for the information." Christy looked at the money, horrified. It was blood money. I can't. I don't want it." "Yes, you can," Timur said. It was not a suggestion. It was a command. "You served us. You get paid." Christy was crying, but she didn't make a sound. She just watched, her body shaking. Then he did the final thing. The thing that would seal her fate. He reached over and grabbed a clean, white napkin from the dispenser. He took a pen from his inner pocket. It was a heavy, expensive-looking black and gold pen. He wrote 2 short lines on the napkin. His handwriting was sharp, angry, and fast. He pushed the napkin across the counter to her. It slid over the formica and stopped right in front of her. Christy looked down. Her vision was blurry from her tears. The note said, "Tell Dmitri. His older brother knows he is alive. You can't run from family." Christy's blood ran even colder. It wasn't a family reunion. It wasn't a hello. It was a death threat. It was a death warrant. And she was the one who had to deliver it. Timur looked at her one last time. His face was a mask of stone. He was not her uncle. He was the Pakhan. Das Vidania, he said. Goodbye. He turned. He and his men walked to the door. The bell on the door jingled. It was such a happy, simple, normal sound. It sounded like a scream. Christy watched as they got into a large, black sedan that had appeared in the parking lot. A car that wasn't there before, waiting for them in the dark. The car's engine started with a low, angry rumble. It pulled away, its red taillights disappearing into the night. They were gone. The diner was silent. Sal poked his head out of the kitchen. His face was white as a ghost. Christy? Kid? Are you okay? Who were those guys? Christy didn't answer. She couldn't speak. She was left alone in the bright, empty diner. The smell of coffee and apple pie was thick in the air. It made her feel sicker than she had ever felt in her life. She looked at the two things on the counter in front of her. One was a pile of blood money. Money from the man who was her uncle. The other was a napkin. A death warrant for her father. Her old life was over. It had just died. Right here on the dirty floor of the Red Star Diner. And she had no idea what to do next. The drive home was a blur. Christy couldn't remember pulling out of the diner's parking lot. She couldn't remember getting on the highway. Her old car seemed to be driving itself, its headlights cutting through the pre-dawn darkness. But the world outside the windows looked fake. It looked like a movie set. Her hands were clamped to the steering wheel, but she couldn't feel them. Her apron was still on, and the thick wad of cash in the pocket felt heavy, like a stone. The napkin was in her other pocket, felt like it was on fire. Dmitri. His name is Dmitri. The name echoed in her head, over and over. It sounded foreign, wrong. Her father's name was Oleg. Oleg Wakeman. He was Oleg. He was the man who taught her to ride a bike. The man who held her when her mom got sick. The man who made her pancakes shaped like bunnies every birthday. He couldn't be a liar. But she saw Timur's face. She saw the cold, gray eyes. The eyes that looked just like her dad's. She pulled onto the dark, familiar street of her hometown. The town was asleep. She passed the closed post office, the dark barber shop. She turned onto their little side street. At the end of the street was their small house, attached to the bakery. Wakeman's Breads. A warm, yellow light was already on in the bakery kitchen. He was up. He was working. For her entire life, that light and the warm, sweet smell of yeast and sugar that even now drifted out to the street had been the symbol of safety. It was the most comforting thing in her world. It meant Dad was home. It meant everything was okay. Tonight it smelled like a lie. She parked the car, but she didn't get out. She just sat there, the engine ticking as it cooled. She could see his shadow move past the flowered-up window. He was whistling, a soft, tuneless song he always whistled when he was rolling out the dough. Her heart felt like it was breaking in two. Please, she thought, please let him be Oleg. Please let that man be a crazy person. But she knew. She knew by the sick, cold feeling in her stomach. She knew by the scar. You go home. You ask him about his older brother, Timur. She finally got out of the car. Her legs felt like they were full of sand. She walked to the back door of the bakery, the one that led right into the kitchen. Her hand was shaking as she reached for the doorknob. She pushed it open. The wave of warmth and the smell of fresh, baking bread hit her like a wall. It was so normal, so real. Her father was standing at the big, wooden table, his back to her. He was wearing his usual white t-shirt, covered in flour, and his old, checkered apron. Christy, You are home early, Malishka, little one, he said, not turning around. His voice was warm, happy, and familiar. Did Sal let you go? It was a slow night. Dad? She said. Her voice was hoarse. It was a whisper. It sounded wrong. He stopped whistling. He stopped kneading the dough. His hands just froze. He slowly turned around, a smile on his face. What is it, Christy? You sound. The smile died on his face. He saw her. He saw her face. She wasn't standing by the door. She was standing in the middle of the room, as if she were a stranger. Her face was white as a sheet, streaked with tears. Her body was shaking. She was holding her apron pocket with a white-knuckled grip. Christy? Bwajah moi, my God. What is wrong? He said, his voice instantly full of panic. Did you get in an accident? Are you hurt? He started to walk toward her, wiping his floury hands on his apron. Who are you? She whispered. He stopped. What do you mean? Christy, you are scaring me. It's me. It's Dad. No, she said, her voice getting stronger. She took a step back, away from him. Who are you? Before you were a baker. Before you met Mom. Where did you come from? Oleg looked confused. But underneath the confusion, Christy saw something else. Something she had never, ever seen on his face before. Fear. Pure, cold, animal fear. What is this, Christy? He said, trying to laugh it off, but his voice was tight. We have talked about this. I came from Chicago. I had a hard life. I wanted something new. So I came here. I met your mother. We started this bakery. This life. You know this. He was lying. She could see it now. His eyes. They darted away from hers for just a second. To the door. He was already looking for an escape. You're lying, she said. Her voice was flat. Oleg's face hardened. Christy, you are tired. You are not making sense. Go to bed. No, she said. Her voice rose, turning into a shout. I am not going to bed. I met a man tonight, Dad. For men. They came into the diner. She watched his face. The color drained from it. He knew. Before she even said another word, he knew. What men? He whispered. Rich men. Dangerous men. In dark, expensive suits. She said, her voice shaking as the memory came back. They had Russian accents. They looked like Mafia. Oleg took an involuntary step back. He bumped hard into the big rack of cooling loaves. The metal rack shivered. Christy, what did they want? They just wanted coffee. And pie, Christy said, the tears starting to flow again, hot and angry. And then I did something. I did something stupid, Dad. I told the boss something. What? He breathed. What did you tell him? I told him he looked just like you. Her father's face collapsed. He didn't fall. He just folded. He put both hands on the floury table to hold himself up. His head dropped. No, he breathed. No. No, 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 no. He asked me your name, she cried. And I told him. I said, Oleg Wakeman. And he almost let it go. He thought I was crazy. Her father let out a shaky breath, looking up, a wild hope in his eyes. Good. It's just a coincidence, Malishka. Just a... And then I told him about the scar, she screamed. Oleg's hands flew up to his face. He touched the small, white line above his left eye. His entire body went rigid. No, he whispered. Christy, Net. Please no. Who is Timur Pokrovsky? She yelled. the name feeling like acid in her mouth. Her father collapsed. His legs gave out. He slid down the side of the wooden table and sat heavily on the floor, in a pile of spilled flour. He looked like a ghost. He put his head in his hands, and his whole body started to shake. He started to sob. It was not a sound she had ever heard. It was not the sad crying of a man. It was a raw, terrified, animal sound. The sound of a man who had just been handed a death sentence. "He found me," he whispered into his hands. "After 20 years, after all this time, he found me." "It's true?" Christy asked, her own heart shattering into a million pieces. "All of it?" "It's all true." He looked up at her. The kind, gentle baker was gone. In his place was a broken, terrified stranger. "My name," he said, his voice choking, "is Dmitri Pokrovsky, and Timur is my older brother." Christy's legs finally gave out. She slid down the wall, her back hitting the plaster. She sat on the cold, flour-dusted floor, just staring at the man who was her father. He said you stole from him. He said you betrayed the family." "I did," Dmitri said, his voice flat. He was so broken. "I betrayed the Bratva, the organization, not the family. It was blood money, our father's money. Timur, he changed after our father died. He became a monster, cold, cruel. He gave me this scar." He touched his eye. "Because I questioned him. Because I told him I wanted out." He looked at Christy, his eyes full of a pain she had never seen, a 20-year-old pain. I met your mother, Elena. She was good. She was a librarian. She was not part of that world. She was so pure, and she was so scared of him, of that life. I wanted out. I wanted a real life, with her, with you. "So you stole from a mafia boss," Christy said, her voice numb. "I stole what was mine," he said, slamming his fist on the floor. A puff of flour rose into the air. "My inheritance. Our father left it for both of us. But Timur said it all belonged to the organization now. I took her and I took my money and we ran. We ran as far as we could. I faked my own death. We changed our names. We started over. Just to be normal. Just to be bakers." He was crying again, but silently now. "I thought he believed I was dead. For 20 years. We were safe. We were happy." Christy felt something in her apron pocket. The napkin. Her hand was shaking as she pulled it out. It was just a flimsy piece of paper. She stood up on wobbly legs and walked over to her father. She didn't throw it. She just dropped it in his lap. Dmitri looked at it. He unfolded the napkin with a trembling hand. He read the 2 lines. "Tell Dmitri. His older brother knows he is alive. You can't run from family." Dmitri let out a sound. A small, awful, choking sound. "He will kill me," he whispered, staring at the napkin. "He will not just kill me. He will make it hurt. And he will find you. He will hurt you." He looked up at Christy, his eyes wild with a panic she had never seen. The broken man was gone. The cornered animal was in his place. "He knows," he whispered. "He knows. He knows where I am." He scrambled to his feet. He ran to the cash register by the front of the bakery and ripped it open. He started stuffing the bills into his pocket. "Christy, we have to run. Not tomorrow. Not in an hour. Now!" he yelled. He ran past her, up the small stairs that led to their apartment. "Go. Pack a bag. Just your wallet. Your passport. We have to go. We have to disappear." Chris Try heard him upstairs, tearing his room apart. Drawers were being ripped open. She just stood there, in the middle of the kitchen. The warm, sweet smell of bread was everywhere. Her home. Run. Her father had been running for 20 years. He had run. He had lied. He had hidden. And in one night, it had all been for nothing. One stupid, innocent comment and the monster was at the door. She reached into her other apron pocket. She pulled out the thick, heavy wad of cash. Timur's money. This is for you. For my new niece. Dmitri came running back down the stairs. He had a small bag in one hand and his coat in the other. He was pale and sweating. Come on, he yelled, grabbing her arm. Christy, Devi, let's go. We can go to Canada. We can change our names again. I have money hidden. We can. No. He stopped. He stared at her as if she were crazy. What? Christy, you don't understand. He is not a man. He is a force of nature. He will. No, she said, her voice shaking, but it was loud. I'm not running. We're not running. You want to die? He screamed, terrified. No, she shouted back. I want to live. You've been running for 20 years. Dad, you've been hiding. You've been Oleg the baker. And it didn't work. He still found you. We can't run forever. So what? He cried. We wait for him to come here? To put a bullet in my head? In your head. He called me his niece, Christy said, her voice quiet. She held up the cash. He gave me this. A lot of money. He told me to tell you he knows. He didn't send his men. He told me. He warned me. He's testing us. Dmitri stared at the money and then at his daughter's face. What are you saying? I'm saying, you're right. We can't stay here, she said, her mind suddenly clear. The fear was gone. In its place was a cold, hard resolve. Pokrovsky resolve. He just told us our time as Wakemans is over. He's giving us a chance. A head start. Dmitri looked at his daughter. He saw her eyes. They weren't just scared anymore. They were strong. They were the eyes of her mother. And they were the eyes of his brother. He stopped panicking. He took a deep, shuddering breath. He looked at the bakery, the life he had built, the lie he had loved. You're right, he whispered. He is giving us a choice. Run in fear, or just leave. We leave, Christy said. We leave right now, but we don't run. We go. Together. As us. He looked at his daughter, really looked at her. He saw the brave, strong woman she had become. A woman who had faced his monster and hadn't broken. A slow, sad smile touched his face. You are amazing, Malishka. You are so much stronger than I am. You're strong too, Dad, she said, and she took his hand. You survived. You gave me a life. Now, let's go live a real one. He nodded. The terror was fading. In its place was just sadness and a deep, profound love for his daughter. He looked around the warm kitchen one last time. He touched the flour on the table. Goodbye, Oleg, he whispered. He grabbed his bag. Christy grabbed her purse. She left the blood money on the counter next to the napkin. A payment for their old life. They walked out the back door together. They didn't look back. They got into her old, beat-up car. The sun was just starting to rise, painting the sky in pale shades of pink and orange. They drove out of the small town onto the highway. They drove for a long time in silence. Finally, as the sun cleared the horizon, Her father turned to her. The man next to her was not Oleg anymore. He was just her dad. "My name is Dmitri," he said, his voice quiet. It is very nice to meet you, Christy." Christy looked at him. She saw the fear and the sadness and the love, and she wasn't scared anymore. She reached over and took his hand. "It's nice to meet you too, Dad." They drove west into the rising sun, leaving the ghosts of Russia and the smell of bread behind them. They didn't know where they were going, but for the first time they were going there together, and they were finally free.
Thank you for listening all the way. Your support means everything. Subscribe, leave a comment with your real name and where you're from, and you might see your shout out in the next story. You never know, the next one might just change your life.